A few years ago, I had a dream where I was playing guitar on the beaches of Oregon, and I wanted to fulfill this dream. And so I set out to do so. And I wanted to play Across the Universe by the Beatles on the shores of Oregon, the Oregon beaches. And so I set out to do that, and I did. And, it was one of the most perplexingly calm and peaceful moments of my life, despite being in a very chaotic state at the time. I definitely wasn't, trying to escape my reality by any stretch, but I wanted to really do something that I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to go to Oregon, but it was when I really had that dream of playing guitar on the beach that I wanted to fulfill that for sure. And I remember, it was at the bottom of Oregon. Anybody that's been to Oregon, especially on the coast, you'll see how there's like this place where there's these natural bridges. Beautiful, beautiful place. I mean, you're just approaching this, the redwoods kind of a place, and you'll see these huge trees. I mean, just massive trees. I've never seen trees like this. And it's not really like the redwoods national parks themselves, but just beautiful trees, right? Fantastic, amazing. I mean, the tree trunks were bigger than your car, like as it is long, right? So just massive trees. Felt like I was in Jurassic Park or something. And I remember seeing those natural bridges, and I remember playing my guitar on the beach that night. Watching the sunset on the horizon over the ocean. And I was thinking about this, and I'm not really nostalgic here, but I'm just thinking about the times that were simpler. I do think nostalgia is a drug, and so I'm not really nostalgic about this, but I'm just remembering that moment and remembering how I gave everything I had to get to that moment. At the time, I felt like I had given everything of my life to just play that song on the beach there. And I was very much fulfilled in some way. And I think a lot of people nowadays, they are willing to give a lot of, advice about this or that or how to live their lives, but they don't take this advice. They don't take the advice. And I was introduced to the concept of Solomon's paradox recently. And Solomon's paradox is basically where King Solomon, who wrote the Proverbs and such in the Bible, he gave great advice, but his life was very chaotic. His life was very, I wouldn't say dirty necessarily, but it was not the cleanest of lives, right? And it's like, well, how can you trust somebody whose advice led them to become, this crazy person, so to speak, and just losing their minds and losing their families, losing their everything that they've built and that they had built. And I often think about this with like Nietzsche as well. Like Nietzsche's philosophy drove him crazy, right? Also, how can you take advice from people where they have a lot of wisdom, but they don't have the discipline to act on this? It's one thing to have wisdom, but it's another thing entirely to have the discipline in your spirit to do so. And I just have to say that I am tired of listening to people who think they know everything and that they're capable of giving advice. And if you take the advice, and it doesn't pan out the way that you want it to, or that they want it to, well, that's a tricky business, because then you're saying something that, and you're giving people instructions on how to live, where if it ends good, well, then it's the person who gives advice. It's like their sense of accomplishment, right? But if the advice goes astray, well, then it's not the person who's giving advice's fault. It's the person who did it, right? So the person who's receiving advice sometimes is never in a good position. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And I'm just getting tired of hearing people talk about how to live their lives when they don't know how to take advice. Now, this is not an advice giving video. I'm not here to give you advice. I'm here to just say, like, it's so funny how people will try to critique. Like, you know what it is? I think it's just that we live in a nation, and we're not really just a nation, a society of critiquing. Everybody's got something to critique about. And if somebody's going to offer me advice, then sometimes I'll just follow it. Now, I don't know if this is necessarily the best thing to do, but sometimes I'll follow it. And if it proves to be wrong, I'll then show them why it's wrong. And I say, look, I followed your advice. This is what happened. This was not right. Maybe this is the better route. Maybe instead of this, how about if you do this, well, then maybe that will happen. And so I'll correct the advice given. Now, is this, necessary? Not all the time, but sometimes people can be so caught up with trying to look like they know things. And then when you point out that they don't really know what they're talking about, they're going to be the ones to, project on you. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know this. You don't know anything, bro. And that's where I just stop casting my pearls before swine. And I just say, okay, well, so you're one of those people that wants to give advice, but you don't want to take it. Cool. Noted. You're one of those people that wants to, because I'm willing to give people the benefit of the doubt, but you know what? I'm just so tired of giving people the benefit of the doubt. Show me what you're made of. If you're going to do something and you're going to claim to advise this thing, then follow it. I do not give advice or preach about things that I myself wouldn't do. Now, you can look through my actions and you can determine that for yourself. You don't need to take my word for it. But I am so spiritually exhausted listening to people who think about how other people need to live their lives more than they do, more than they can live their lives, because these people don't have the discipline to do so. They're just wanting to have a facade. And it's these same people that, sometimes, like, especially in the workplace, this will happen, is where people will naturally, start to form these cliques in the workplace, right? For example, or just in school or wherever it is, right? And it's like some of these people just try to form connections with the right people so that they don't have to do as much. And it's honestly not a bad strategy. It's not. It's a reasonable strategy. If you don't want to get to where you actually, like, if you want to not earn where you get to where you're going, then yeah, that's a great strategy. But if you want to earn your way to the top, so to speak, then you've got to do the work. And it doesn't just happen in the workplace, it happens internally in your life. If you take on platitudes of discourse from others, and you internalize those platitudes, and you treat them as your own, there's one of two things that can happen. Number one is there's a sense of ego inflation, which I do think it's appropriate for you to have a healthy ego. I think it's good to have a healthy ego. But ego inflation is not good. And spiritual pride is even worse. And I know that because I've done that. I've been there. Okay? Been there, done that. It's not a fun time, and it'll usually get you in a lot of trouble. Number two is what will happen is something actually good happens. There's a sense of understanding. Because, this is where sometimes people, generally speaking, sometimes people are so, they're so wrapped up in the catastrophes of what could go wrong. Like, it's a catastrophe in of itself to think about what's going on or what's going to happen for a lot of people. And for other people, they just don't care. They just don't give a crap. And they are willing to drag you down with them because they think that they know things. And the best thing that you can do in situations where when you're around somebody where they make it seem like they know what they're doing and they know what they're talking about, and they want to give advice but don't take any. They're not open to correction, right? I myself am open to correction. I welcome correction. I welcome critiques. But what I don't welcome is ad hominems. I don't welcome trolls. I just don't care about that kind of stuff. I don't entertain it anymore. I used to try to see and have more compassion for these people. And of course I do have compassion, but it's like, I can only give so many F's a day. I only have so many F's to give in one day, man. And, maybe my F's to give are just about out, and it's only been a couple hours in the day, right? So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But sometimes I just don't have it's not the fortitude of mind, because I do have the fortitude. It's just that the people have been robbed by their own, it's not maliciousness. They've been robbed by their own industrialized version of embracing what it means to be a human being. They've completely absorbed so much and consumed so much that they themselves are stricken by their consumption. The same thing that promised them to be liberated from these platitudes and these ideologies, it's the same thing that has constricted them. They've been completely constricted in regard to the ways of consumption and addiction, I would say. They've been so addicted to consumption that they want to consume other people's souls as well. They might not understand this, they might not know this, but it's just taxing, it's just taxing on the soul. And I'm just so grateful to have my soul. I'm so grateful to be able to have experiences like I did in Oregon, where I can look back and I can say that I followed my own advice. I did exactly what I set out to do. I said, come hell or high water, I am going to Oregon and I'm going to play a guitar on the beach because that's what I want to do. And I'm a man. I've got balls. I'm going to create life. I'm going to go out and I'm going to create my reality with the Lord, Jesus Christ. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do what I want to do, because God said that ye are gods. We are God-like, but we are not God himself. We are made in the image of God. This is an amazing thing. This is a beautiful thing. You yourself are amazing. You were made from God. You were made by God. And yet, so many of you out there, maybe I'm not talking to you, maybe I am. So many of you out there, I'm kind of just speaking, I suppose, to the society at large. So many of you out there are so wrapped up in these meaningless things because you want to be distracted, because if you're not distracted, it means you have to face your soul, and you will do anything at all if it means that you don't have to communicate with yourself. You will do anything if it means that you don't have to be real with yourself. Now, there's a lot of you that are willing to be real. There's a lot of you that are willing to communicate. And there's a lot of you that are not relying on emotions to make your decisions. And I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. I think you ought to do what you ought to do in that regard. But so many freaking men are so emotional without thinking they're emotional and without knowing they're emotional. And so many women have just they've been robbed of their innocence. And they're now taking it out on other people. Everybody knows the saying, hurt people hurt people. We have a guy in the Regal Change Academy group that mentions it every now and again. Because it's, well, number one, it's true, but also think about that. That's a platitude. Okay, it's not a bad platitude, but that's a platitude. And I don't think that that's something to necessarily, relieve yourself of. Because some thought algorithms, I like to call them thought algorithms more so than platitudes or anything like that, but because some thought algorithms are platitudes, but not all platitudes, some platitudes are thought algorithms, but not all thought algorithms are platitudes. That's the way that I think about it. And so something that I also believe that many people are struggling with is the reconciliation between their soul and the relationship they have to the God. And they don't know how to relate to the God. Well, how do you relate to some omniscient, all-powerful being, right? How do you relate to God? How do you relate to someone like that? How do you relate to something like that? Well, you do so by just living itself. Jesus Christ is a God of suffering. Look at the cross. Hello. Look at the cross. Look what he did on the cross. No matter how you look at that, you can look at a man, because God was a man. He is, but that's his body, right? Like, he had to come into. People will get so upset about this. It's so crazy, but it's like you just listen for a second, buddy. Listen for a second. We are made in the image of God. God also has a body. God also has a spirit. God also has a soul. That's the Holy Spirit. Okay? That's the spirit. Father in heaven, that's the soul. Jesus Christ is the body. Jesus had to enter our world because we forgot about the relationship to him. It's kind of like, think about this, right? We at one point in time in humanity's existence, we just knew that we had a relationship with God. We never, at one point, we had never forgotten that relationship. And God never forgot that relationship. But eventually down the line, we did. And so God had to enter into our world to show us and remind us. Sprinklers came on. Everything's overflowing now, which is good, but in a good way. But God had to show us what exactly, how we were missing out. And we were able to now have a personal relationship with him. It's not just some abstract thing in the sky. It's something that has substance. It's something that has power. It's something that has meaning. Jesus Christ is the numinous, the narrative, and the physical combined. Okay? I just hope and pray that people have enough of an open heart to see this, but also a reasonable mind to distinguish and to live that which is true from that which is false. Live what is true. Let die what is false. This is something I've been preaching about since one of my first videos that I've been online with social media and such for the past nearly 2.5, 3 years now. If we don't know how to live what is true, if we don't know what it means to really live in accordance to the laws, statutes, and commandments of God, and to live with the fruits of the Holy Spirit, then of course we're going to have these struggles. Of course we're going to be wrapped up in materialist things. The demons and the devil they don't want you to know or believe that they exist. Remember, everybody knows this is another platitude. The greatest, well, it's more of a saying, I suppose, than a platitude, but Everybody knows the saying, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was to convince everybody that he doesn't exist. Because why? We are more susceptible to his influence. And remember, the devil cannot create pleasure. The devil can't create a pain. He can only influence you one way or another to do so. He can't create those things. The devil is the god of the world, the worldliness, right? But this is what the devil, like, remember, the devil is a liar. Okay, the devil is a liar. And so many people are vessels of the devil without even knowing they are. And some are vessels of the devil thinking that they're vessels of God. And I do my due diligence to ensure that I am never leading anybody astray. Because if I would be leading people astray, then that means that I am not fit to be a servant of God. But I don't believe that's the case. And I don't give unsolicited advice. I give messages out here, but people that give unsolicited advice and then when they're shown unsolicited advice, they're like, "Oh no, you don't know." Man, screw those people. Screw those people. And I'm not apologizing for any of this. I'm not apologizing for anything I have to say in this video. Everything that I said, I spoke from the heart. So I hope that this video was insightful and useful or edifying in some way, shape, or form. And I hope everybody has a blessed day. I'm going to hit the gym now and make some dinner afterward. I'm thinking I'm going to make some healthy pizza. I'm going to make some nice, healthy pizza, maybe with cottage cheese. Have you guys ever seen that? Apparently you can make crust, like with cottage cheese and eggs. It's a very, like, good alternative, but I'll see if I can do that. If not, then I'll just make some dough or something, but some regular dough. But I really want to try that cottage cheese and egg crust because it looked pretty good, but I don't know if it actually works or not. But I hope everybody stays blessed. Stay close to God, stay close to Jesus Christ, and peace be with you. Until next time.